Okay, let's try that again. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the City of Bloomington Council to order. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence and prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matthey. Councilmember Bolin.
Here.
Councilmember Motney.
Here.
Councilmember Emig.
Present.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Urban.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Crable.
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Here.
Mayor Millawamble.
Here. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is recognition. And we do have at this point a different recognition than we typically have. And this one is an employee remembrance for Thomas Dittmer, who was an employee of SOAR Recreation, and he was an instructor in 2012. And I think I just would like to give maybe just a 1 minute or second for Mr. Gleason. You want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor. This is just an opportunity that we started a couple of years ago when we started the accomplishments for the previous year. We also wanted to take the opportunity to recognize employees that had passed in that past year. And Tom Dittmer was one of the SOAR employees for the Parks and Recreation. We have the family that if you guys would like to come to the podium and just share a couple of words, but this was an opportunity for us to share, our sadness in the passing of your husband and father. And I wanted to recognize that. And that's this meeting because we have the accomplishments 21 presentation later in the council agenda. And you don't have to, but we wanted to take the opportunity to recognize your husband. So thank
Sure.
you.
Would you like to come forward? Go ahead. The mic right there.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you. I appreciate the recognition that you're giving him. Tom really enjoyed working with not just Aubrey, but all the other people that were involved with SOAR. He was close to both the staff and the participants, and he enjoyed that while keeping an eye on Aubrey as well. So thank you again. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, at this point, we're going to go ahead and move to a public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment?
We do. We received emailed public comment from Dave Kobus and Kathy Eddington. And then we have two people here to speak in person, Scott Steimling and Gary Lambert, when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think Scott is first, right?
Yes.
Okay, Scott, if you could please come forward.
Mayor, did you want to read your
Oh, yep.
statement?
Sorry. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Scott
Let me-
Steinlich.
Sorry, let me go ahead and read my
Okay, I'm sorry.
statement first. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time be ceased. So go ahead. Thank you.
Scott Steimling, Ward 5. I did have a concern about the sidewalks and the roads. The sidewalks are so bad that I've seen people try to navigate the sidewalks. Saw one with a walker several years ago. And it was so bad, they turned around and went back to his son's. The roads are terrible. In certain places, the curb line is level with the sidewalks. There's no excuse for that. I realize that there are a lot of roads to take care of, but if the city would have been doing a little each year, we would not be in crunch mode right now. And I brought this up to my alderman, and he's aware of this, but as I keep bringing this up, was so bad that at one point there was a neighbor with a disabled granddaughter. And I saw her hike that wheelchair up over the curb line with a junior high granddaughter in it. And I went down, I said, "You're out of your mind." She called the city, and the city was out the next morning at 8 o'clock because they knew they were wrong. They were dead wrong. And by that time, this law had been in effect at least 20 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Next.
Next up, we have Gary Lambert.
I am Gary Lambert. I'd like to speak a few words on honesty. Going back a number of years, 20, the city imposed a 0.25% 10-year tax for the enhancement of BCPA in the downtown. Then we had the Coliseum come along. We were told that it would make $7 million profit a year. Citizens would not have to pay a single cent to support it. And we come along to the 0.5% income tax increase for a structural deficit. That deficit is gone. We've now padded our slush fund for most anything. On the March 1st interview with WJBC, Mr. Gleason said, "We have the ability now to do everything." I'd like to praise Mr. Gleason for being honest. Up until this time, Coliseum, we had corruption running rampant. Previous mayor and city manager had no desire to pursue and investigate it. But now, at least, it's out in the open. The Coliseum is no longer an enterprise fund. I would ask the council is when they will see a vote on that. Got a little short thing to read since I've got a little bit of time. This is from Dr. Walter Williams. Conservatives and liberals are kindred spirits as far as government spending is concerned. First, let's make sure we understand what government spending is. Since government has no resources of its own, and since there's no tooth fairy handing, and I'm going to substitute city council for his word of Congress, the funds for the programs it enacts. We are forced to recognize that government spending is no less than a confiscation of one person's property to give it to another to whom it does not belong. In effect, legalize theft. Think about that when you're spending from your slush fund.
Thank you, Gary. Nobody else next? Okay, thank you very much. We are now going to move on to the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that members of the council would like to have removed? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion? Okay, motion by Councilmember Bolin. Is there a second? Okay, second by Councilmember Urban. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Yeah, and if I could, I just wanted to also point out really quickly to the public that item 7G, an updated contract was provided to council prior to, and it didn't have a change in value. Just wanted to point that out. So
you.
let's see, Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Motney,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Urban,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Crable,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is regular agenda item 8A, presentation on the FY 2023 proposed budget as requested by the Finance Department. And there is no recommended motion. This is for presentation purposes only. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for some introductory comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before I turn it over to Finance Director Scott Rathbun, we're down the home stretch of the FY 23 budget process. Approval will be tentatively scheduled for the council meeting April 11th. We have tried to increase the transparency and having this public budget conversation with the community during this process. I think we've done that the past couple of years. Also have digital links on our website that talk about the budget and the budget process. It's been updated this past year, but always looking for ways to improve this. So Scott, I'm going to turn this over to you and share the FY 23 proposed budget.
Thank you, City Manager Gleason, Mayor, Council. This presentation is somewhat repetitive. That's by intent, trying to provide some continuity to the subject matter that we're presenting for understanding purposes. By city code, we are required to present a proposed budget. So this is the official proposed budget to council by March 15th of every year. The numbers have not changed since the February 28th presentation, but hopefully tonight we can provide some additional insight and perspective on the budget, how the dollars are being spent. Specifically, we'll break down the general fund to some degree related to the functional departments within the fund. And then we'll cover some of the budget, what I like to refer to as the budget dollars at work, some of where the rubber meets the road kind of activity for the city, where those budget dollars are going. So next slide, please. I'm going to go somewhat quickly through these. These numbers have not changed from the previous meetings. We have a $17.4 million increase over the prior year. Through 13.2 million of that is related to the general fund. We have over $12 million in non-recurring activity. The material components of that are the American Rescue Plan Act dollars, almost $6 million of that. We're paying cash for equipment in the general fund, but we still have some residual leases that are rolling off. So we have about $2 million in principal and interest related to that in the general fund. The library, they're having some residual expansion budgetary items in 2023. The project is going to be encumbered in 2022, but some of their equipment and furnitures and fixtures are budgeted for 2023, and that's about 2.4 million. And then the other material items are $1 million for the CDBG IDA grants, and the Bloomington Election Commission is about $500,000. So that's a little over $12 million in non-recurring items. So again, want to convey to the community that we're not experiencing a large growth in government, but there is variability in our budgets related to non-recurring items, things of that nature. Next slide, please. So this kind of captures that concept related to getting perspective on the growth of the budget. This exhibit was reviewed last on the 28th of February. The change here is that we've updated the non-recurring line. It still just shows ARPA and the library, but we've incorporated some of those other items I just spoke to. So bumping that up to 12.7, we could do a deep dive into that activity, but those are the material items. So the impact this had was really it's kind of smoothed our annual growth rate. looks like we have a column issue there. It says RAT growth rate from 2% to 2.5% between 2016 and 2023. Next slide, please. The number of eyes that look at these and we still miss things. So. Major tax revenues, no change from prior review. You know, we like to show these. These are revenues that are driven by economic conditions, so they have variability in them. We're fortunate that the economic condition of our community is very healthy. We've had some recent, over the last couple of years, legislative changes that have helped us dramatically related to online retail sales tax. We have the cannabis dispensary. You know, we are experiencing a little downturn in telecom, utility expense, or excuse me, utility revenue, but other categories are doing well. You know, adjusting for what we took the revenues down from 21 to 22, and adjusting for the new revenue streams sources that I just referenced, this really reflects about a 1.7% annualized growth rate from 21, which that was a kind of a pre-COVID budget. We didn't amend that budget when we went into that year, even though COVID was just hitting. Next slide, please. General fund revenues, just briefly, $6.5 million increase. So we're going to focus on the dollar change column here. That does not tie exactly to the previous exhibit, as not all those tax revenues are reflected in the general fund that we just went through on the major tax revenue exhibit. And then the other material item here, the $6.7 million change in intergovernmental revenue, that's reflective of the $5.6 million placeholder for the American Rescue Plan Act. Next slide, please. General fund expenditures. I did not mention this on the summary page, but I had previously that one of the increases of about $3 million in the general fund was related to staffing increases, primarily related to IT initiatives for the city. So that 3.2 million between salaries and benefits reflective of that, and normal cost of living increases and health insurance, et cetera, increases, which we're showing here. Our estimate for health insurance increase is approximately 6%. And then capital expenditures, highlighting the $4.8 million increase. That's where we're reflecting all cash for equipment for the coming year. And then kind of highlighting my $2 million comment from previously. If you look at the principal and interest expense lines, you can see for 2023, we have about $1.8 million budgeted in principal and $143,000 in interest. And primarily those are those residual leases from prior years. And that number will roll off as we continue to pay cash for equipment. So our capital expenditure lines will be reflective of what we're paying for equipment, but that principal interest and expense related to the equipment will come down. And then other expenditures up 5 million. Again, that's the expense side of the American Rescue Plan Act placeholder for 5.6 million. Next slide, please. This is a new exhibit for the evening, so spending just a little bit of time on this. This is the general fund broken down by functional area. So I would just want to highlight the 2022, 2023 columns. Those tie to the totals that we just went through. So 2022, 109 million. 2023, 122 million. So that's the $13.2 million increase that was reflected in the previous exhibit. So you can see starting at the top, the material changes for admin. Admin includes legal, finance, HR, those departments has gone up 7 million, but 5.6 million of that is related to the American Plan Act. And then public safety has gone up 2.4 million. Now, let me highlight the column all the way to the right. So what we want to show here is that some of the general fund departments, we focus on from a budgetary standpoint, really mostly on the expenditure side. Where are those expenditures, the total expenditures, how are we doing year over year? But many of these departments have their own revenue sources. So you can see that the net public safety expense after applying their revenues is about 53.8 million. So they recover about $7.2 million in revenues. And then rolling down, about halfway down, parks, rec and cultural arts, a fairly sizable budget, 13.2 million, but you can see after revenue is applied to that for all their programs, for ICE, the zoo, et cetera, it's 8.5 million, so $4.7 million in revenue for that category. So just another example of trying to get some perspective on the budget, looking at it from a different angle The other line item I wanted to highlight was asphalt and concrete. So that sticks out, negative 6.2 million. So what is that about? Well, we used to deposit all tax revenues directly into the general fund and then transfer them to the other funds, irrespective of the restrictions on them. Home rule, a major component of home rule sales tax stays in the general fund. Some of it's allocated for bond expenditures. And then 10% of it is transferred to the asphalt and concrete fund. All of the local motor fuel tax is restricted for asphalt and concrete. So we decided we wanted to deposit those revenues, specifically the local motor fuel tax, but the portion of the home rule as well, straight into the asphalt and concrete fund instead of showing that transfer. So it's going to help out some of the transparency related to our budget. So just again, I just want to emphasize all restricted revenues, 10% of home rule, all of the local motor fuel tax, that is all being deposited into the asphalt and concrete fund. Next slide, please. Citywide budget revenues, the use of fund balance, real quickly. Again, we show a balanced budget. So whenever we're using reserves, we show that as a revenue source, although it's not real revenues, it's just a use of reserves, but that's the way we highlight it in our exhibits. So $33 million in use of reserves or fund balance. You can see in the notes that 19.4 million of that is related to motor fuel tax. That's the state motor fuel tax projects. Taxes, the change year over year is 14 million. This is relatively close to the major tax revenue exhibit. Again, it does not match exactly, as we do not show all tax revenues in that major tax revenue exhibit. $8.3 million, $8.4 million increase in intergovernmental revenue. Again, the American Rescue Plan Act dollars driving our budget up for the coming year. Miscellaneous revenue, $5.5 million down from the prior year. Again, this is related to using essentially a cash basis accounting in our budget reporting. During 2022, we showed $11.7 million in borrowing for O'Neill Pool. That is not included in FY23, so therefore we have a reduction in that category. And last fall, emphasizes last month as well, transfers in. We have interfund transfers between all, like the library fund and our bond funds. So the library is levying $850,000 for debt service for the bond related to the expansion. That will be transferred into a city bond fund. So that's a transfer in revenue for that city bond fund. Next slide, please. Citywide expenses. I'm going to just jump down to the bottom since some of these are redundant related to American Rescue Plan Act and just highlight that $1 million transfer. So this is the library's transfer out. So $850,000, not all of it, but the material part of it, $850,000 levy revenue in the library fund. And then the library is transferring that out to the bond fund. So when we roll up the total budgets on a citywide basis, we are showing transfers in to the bond fund of $850,000 from the library and transfers out of the library to the bond fund. And so we show those on both the revenues and the expenditures. So it has a way of grossing up our budgets for that kind of activity. Next slide, please. This is just a view of our citywide budget by fund. We have 29 funds, so they're not all reflected here. We've grouped some together. The all other funds, this is made up of the Abraham Lincoln Parking Garage, Bloomington Election Commission, et cetera. I wanted to highlight the insurance, the internal service funds. It's an accounting standards requirement that we pay all of our insurance premiums, casualty, health insurance out of a internal service fund. And that fund's revenue source are all the other funds. So the water fund, the sewer fund, the storm fund essentially pays insurance premiums to our internal service fund, and the internal service funds, they're then pay those premium expenses out. So this is another example how we have a revenue coming into an internal service fund from the departments, and then a cost going out to those insurance, paying those insurance premiums, and we have the same expense at the departmental level. So this kind of activity, if we have an increase in rates, it doubles up the impact on our budget. Next slide, please. Our capital improvements, we went through these in detail at the committee of the whole on February 21st. This is just a view of how the funds compared year to year. We have not shown it in this particular format as of yet. We have discussed that the total has gone down $4.4 million from 2022 to 23. Projects can vary significantly from year to year. They can roll from year to year. Depending on the kinds of projects, we can have dramatic increases or decreases in the totals per year. For example, capital improvement fund in 2022 includes $11.7 million for the pool. In 2023, it does not. So there's a significant decrease in that fund year over year. The water fund had $6.2 million for Fort Jesse tank replacement in 2022, and in 2023, it does not. So there's a decrease there as well. So there's variability within those capital projects. A lot of planning goes into the fund reserves, but there's a timing component related to the engineering and all that goes behind the scenes from public works, et cetera, on that decision as well. Next slide, please. We just threw in 3 slides here to highlight the amount of detail that's available on all of our projects. This is just a snippet of one of the detail sheets that is in our the book number 2 of our budget books, which by the way are online today. I'll talk about the location on the website here at the end. But there's a detail informational, we call them detail sheets, although they can be several pages on each project. So we just wanted to show some examples of some of the information available regarding capital projects. This is the Hamilton Bun Street to Morrissey project here. The whole Hamilton project is $13.2 million. Next slide, please. This is an example of one of the Locust Colton exhibits or detail sheets. The total Locust Colton project budgeted for next year, combining for phases 4 and 5, and I believe a design for phase 8 is $8.1 million. Next slide, please. And then this is the arena rooftop units. Some pictures there highlighting the deterioration that's pretty evident with those units. It's a business continuity concern related to the ongoing production or use of the arena at $4.3 million. Next slide, please. And then last of all, a couple of slides related to what we're referring to as budget dollars at work, the services. We spent a lot of time talking about projects, but what are the services being provided by city employees and the city in general? What do they look like from a data standpoint? So hopefully this kind of shows and puts a tangible format where the dollars are going. So police, the last reported, I don't have on here if this was calendar year or fiscal year, but $71,000 or 71,000 calls for service. The fire, almost 13,000. That's 84,000 calls in 1 year. Parks, we've included both during COVID and pre-COVID numbers here. So attendance for parks related programs, I'm going to kind of roll out to the right-hand side. It was 539,000 pre-COVID, 159,000 during COVID, the last full year. Parks maintains, 38 parks, 6 public buildings. You can see your 3 spray parks, pools, lakes, 30 miles of trail, soccer fields, ice rink, golf courses, zoo and cultural arts venue. A lot of activity, a lot of work that needs to be done and executed by that division. Community development, almost 2,200 building permits issued in calendar 2021. A significant amount of work there that keeps the community moving forward in that regard. Economic development, 1,100 business contacts made, keeping the business activity fresh in the community, and the growth is there as well. Facilities, 1 million square feet of facilities maintained. Library, looking at the pre-COVID numbers, 277,000 visits in FY 2020. Arena, pre-COVID, almost 14,000 attendees. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm going to read through these, but to me, this is kind of the impressive part of the budget where really it kind of manifests where the dollars are actually going. Streets maintain 112 lane miles, trash recycling, 43 million pounds hauled in a year, brush hauled 44,000 cubic yards. I think I admitted last year, I'm not really sure what a cubic yard is, but that seems like a very material amount of hauling that's done. Sewer water system, I'll have to find that out for next year. 1,000 miles, water pump, 3.8 billion gallons annually, 10 million gallons per day. That's a significant number. Finance, bragging from my own team, We have about 30,000 utility bill accounts, so 360,000 utility bills and the related payments, which are processed in the hub. Clerk, 1,800 FOIAs. Looks like that number has gone up significantly from calendar year 20, from 1,500 to 1,800. Legal, 319 administrative court cases, almost 3,300 applications processed by HR. That's a big number. That's a lot of applications processed. And it also kind of highlights the need we have here at the city related to personnel. IT, 3,000 devices, 100 applications, maintain over 40 locations. The connectivity challenges that the IT department has related to the fire department, the water department, et cetera, it's pretty staggering. So hopefully this helps kind of highlight where, $270 million of budgetary dollars are going, and the impact it has directly on the residents of our community. Next slide, please. So that concludes the presentation of the proposed budget. As I mentioned, the budget books are online at cityblm.org. If you go to the finance page and then budget, you can find them there. They're also under documents, finance, budget. There's some information right here related to some of the takeaways from each book. If you want to focus on different areas of the budget, this presentation is also online. All the presentations will be online, the same location, documents, finance, budget. As the city manager mentioned, we have a lot of resources out there related to how the budget's put together and some definitions on the funds and some of the transfers and interconnectivity between the funds. And that information can be found in our budget video series. And then we have 2 remaining council meetings related to the budget specifically. We have a public hearing coming up on March 28th for additional public comment on the budget, and then the final adoption on April 11th. And next slide, please. And at this point, we'll take any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. I really enjoyed the presentation. Always do a very nice job, and I particularly appreciate the additional slide that shows us, a lot of the day-to-day stuff that staff does, the number of calls and things like that. So it's really nice to be able to have something that's a little bit more tangible for people to grab onto, as opposed to bigger concepts. So thank you very much. I think before we turn it over to council members for questions, I think City Manager Gleason has a couple comments he'd like to make, maybe.
Thank you, Mayor, and council. This budget process and the presentation by the Finance Director, Scott Rathman, it's constantly evolving. Over the 4 years that I've been here, 4 years that Scott's been the Finance Director. And the thing that I appreciate, and I mean this sincerely, is the opinions that you hear about how the taxpayer dollars should be spent. And we take note of that. We serve a community of nearly 80,000. We are a large organization in terms of municipal services that we deliver to the community, even compared to some of those that have larger populations but have lesser municipal services. But the one thing that I was going to share real quick is I'm proud of the staff, the deputy city manager, the directors, but especially Scott Rathman and his team. While there might be input or differences of opinions on how things should be spent, the one thing that I'm the most proud of, and it matters to me greatly, is the integrity of the process, that we're believed in what we are communicating to the community. And that level of integrity, I feel that. I have felt that over the time that I've been here, and wanted to say thank you to Scott and his team. So thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from, okay. Councilmember Boland?
Yeah, I only have a few comments. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. I know that I'm kind of picky or get into the weeds too much. And just to be silly, a yard is from here to here, and a cubic yard would be from here and then up and out. So it's like a big bushel. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Boland. Any other questions? Councilmember Motney.
So thank you so much. And I appreciate that. And I do agree the integrity of the process is super important and you've been very honorable about that. So slide 15, it was great to see that. I guess that would be what I would call like a gee whiz number slide. What would be helpful to me is to see that with context and trending. That kind of shows what we are doing. But what I'd be interested to see is how is this trended over time? And how has the related expense allocated to that service delivery trended over time? Are we gaining scale so that we can accomplish more at the same or lower cost throughout all of those various examples that were provided there? So really appreciate seeing that. That will allow us to get to an area where we have a performance accountability framework and we can kind of get into a rhythm of not just again what it did cost, but what should it cost? What is the opportunity there? Slide 7, if you don't mind putting that one back up. So, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this. I was driving over here tonight and looking at the advertisements, you know, on the gas stations. I know that's been super in the news as of late, and just learning of 7.9% inflation in the US. I mean, such an incredible number. And what I was thinking about as I was thinking about how that positions us to actually see a lot of these numbers increasing, you know, on the revenue side. How do we start to understand and really empathize with the pain in the community that people are feeling as a result of the significant amount of inflation? A few weeks ago, you know, we had a public comment about that 0.5% sales tax. And I went back and, you know, looked at some of those meeting notes and things. And, you know, should we be talking about looking for opportunities to give some of this money back to our community in the form of staying, you know, perhaps even rolling back that 0.5%, looking for other opportunities that we can consider that allow us to not just empathize, but materially impact the people that we have in this community. I was thinking about many of my coworkers from my former employers driving in from the community surrounding Bloomington. And based on just quick math, I mean, it looks like they'd be paying $30, $35 a week extra in their commute cost. And when you multiply that out, and when you think of how much average people have the disposable income, it's significant. And I just, you know, it's thematic in my mind, like how do we relate to that? And are we doing what we should be doing in terms of providing relief to our folks by reducing our own costs or looking for ways to reduce their load on our tax burden to pay for things? Slide 5, you know, just, you know, when we talk about normal costs of living increases for staff, I had the opportunity to be with some small business owners today. And, you know, I know we have things built into our contracts and that's just a fact and it is what it is. But just again, reflecting with empathy that many businesses don't have that opportunity and their costs are skyrocketing as ours are as well from an insurance standpoint. That was something someone brought up today. And it just, you know, it's making a difference with these folks in the community. So, you know, that's really what I had to say. Just really would like to anchor things in trending and really set some targets for us to think about how can we operationally perform better. And it seems like we ought to at least take a look at that 0.5% sales tax and ask ourselves, given the fact that we've got this 7.9% increase in inflation, and given that that benefits us from a sales tax perspective, is there an opportunity for us to start talking about giving some of that money back to our people in the community. But I do thank you, and I really appreciate the presentation and how great you've been to work with. I've learned a lot from you in these last 10 months, and really thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Motney. Okay, Councilmember Craybill.
Thank you, Mayor. Just some things to point out and then a few questions. And Scott, also thank you for answering my questions. I thought I'd ask them tonight, but you already answered them. So, but just to highlight some of those answers, I think it's important to share publicly. A lot of the increase in our budget is related to non-reoccurring expenses such as ARPA money that we're going to have to spend, right? Or we lose it. We're paying for cash for equipment, which is a big expense, and some other things. And then also we're adding about $800,000 for IT employees, and we've talked about we now have an IT strategic plan that to implement that we need more people to do it, and so just wanted to point that out. And let's see. So the questions I would have, if you could go back to the slide, and let me see if I can get the number. It is 3. There's typically a large difference between the budget and then what we actually spend as a city. I'm assuming a lot of that is every year we defer capital projects. Anything else that would be a big contributor to that?
That's the most material. I didn't run through those numbers, but I'll highlight FY 2021. We budgeted 230 million. We spent 199. That's a $31 million difference, and 21 million of that was related to capital projects. Capital projects also there's also a lot of contractual expenditures and stuff like that. That category, it's our largest category in the budget. That's where we tend to be under in that category as well. But sometimes that's just an overlay or a connection to the capital projects.
Mhm. Okay.
And compensation.
Okay. Thanks. And then with the public safety budget, that budgeted amount, is that to allow for both the police and fire department to be fully staffed?
Yes. Yeah, we capture the entire target in the compensation, but we do an offset in the non-departmental org related to our vacancy savings number. We've recognized that historically we've never been able to hit that number, that target. And so we've just kind of done an offset within the budget, basically reduces salary and compensation in total, but we don't allocate it to the specific department so that we can still let them aim for what they deem they need.
Okay, thanks. And then the reference, so on the 0.5% sales tax, that was like 2006, 2017. And I believe that like when that was passed, what the language was in the ordinance was to go into the general operating budget for those types of expenses. There wasn't anything saying it was for a structural deficit, at least in the ordinance. I don't know if you know that answer.
I don't know that answer.
Okay. Well, that's what I understand. And I think that we just have to consider, when we were, our budget was very tight many years ago, or a number of years ago. There's a lot of things we couldn't do. And I think increasing revenues allows us to do those things that we couldn't do when we balance that versus the taxes that we charge to the company, to the residents. So that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Bullen.
Yeah, I just want to respond to Jeff with the historic knowledge or historic background.
What did I get wrong?
What's that? No. I mean, basically, the- It was called a structural deficit of $7 million. And that's where the task force came from. And it was the task force, the budget task force, that was set up in 2015 that decided we needed to raise the tax. And at that time, also the mental health department or the county came forward. So part of the tax increase goes to mental health and the jail. So you are correct. They did call it a structural deficit. Now may not be in the ordinance, but that was part of the conversation.
Thanks, Donna.
Okay. Oh, Councilmember Motley.
And to that point, the 1/4% that went to mental health was in addition to the 0.5%, right? Because it went up a full point. I
Yeah, it
believe.
was 4.1%. Okay, well, Scott, thank you very much. See you at the next episode. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is also another presentation of the city's 2021 accomplishments as requested by the Administration Department and Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is one that we're excited about every single year. The Deputy City Manager and I, along with the staff, is just walking through the accomplishments as we see them in the previous year. This is something that Billy and I brought to the organization 4 years ago. So this is the 4th time that we've presented this in the past. They've been about 25, 30-minute presentations where he or I or both of us would narrate. But by design and over the past year, we hired a communications manager, and that's Catherine Murphy. And this became her task. So we've got a 7.5-minute video that we're going to play. It will be prominently displayed on the website, just like the past documents that we've done previously. But what the logic behind this is, we're not going to need 30 minutes once a year, because we're going to be telling our story better than we ever have throughout the course of the year, and sharing those accomplishments, in a more timely fashion. But please sit back, enjoy this 7+ minute presentation. But before I hand it off to Catherine, I'd like to allow the Deputy City Manager for a couple of comments.
Thank you. The thing I really want to say is, amidst all of what you will see, and frankly, everything you saw on Scott's slide about the things that get done, is I don't want to lose sight of the collective accomplishment that is managing and leading during a pandemic. We tend to normalize it because it's been going on for so long, but that's not normal. And so, you think about that, and it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, you talk about you as a council and mayor, where you're having to make decisions considering the health and safety of an entire community. You're doing that in the midst of, differing opinions during a pandemic. Got folks who don't want to wear masks and some who do want to wear masks, and people you're having to do it in the midst of all of that. You think about us as a staff, frankly, for each and every day, we're having to make decisions with that so that those critical services that Scott listed continue. I mean, those don't happen like by themselves, and I know you know that, but we're having to do that each and every day. And you added that the fact that we're having to keep our people safe as well. So those things aren't normal. So I don't want to lose sight of how we've been able to do some of the things you'll see, and some of the things you saw in Scott's presentation in the midst of all of that. It is an accomplishment, but we do it because people expect it of us. Tim says it all the time, where we're proud of the fact that we didn't close during COVID, now going on 2 years plus 2 years. But he always says that that's when people need us most. And so we have to be here, so we figure it out. And so I just don't want us to lose sight of that.
Bloomington, Illinois 2021 Year in Review. The city of Bloomington has many reasons to celebrate accomplishments and achievements in 2021, The year started still in the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the city never closed, continuing to provide critical services to the community and ensure that our workforce stayed healthy. Things got chilly when the ice storm hit on January 4th. Public Works crews went into action, cleaning up all around town. As winter continued, crews stayed vigilant, making sure things could keep moving. With the arrival of spring, some familiar faces moved into new roles with the city. After 5 months in the interim role, veteran firefighter Eric West was named fire chief, bringing his more than 3 decades with the company to his new office. In 2021, Bloomington Fire responded to a record number of incidents nearing the 13,000 count. And a changing of the guard in the administration office as new council members Sheila Montney, Nick Becker, and Tom Crumpler were sworn in, and former Ward 3 Councilman Mboka Mulambwe took office as mayor of Bloomington. Spring also brought the arrival of The Hub, a one-stop shop made up of 5 city departments all under one roof. A place where residents can make payments, get permits, pay tickets, and so much more. Summer in the city saw a return of our partnership with the Jewel Foundation and the NAACP on the Youth Enrichment Program, providing area youth a glimpse at government as a career with paid municipal employment experience. The city also experienced a storm event like no other that spurred Public Works crews to assess damage, make repairs, and respond to residents' questions and concerns. Those events prompted staff to create websites that address concerns and give a deeper look into what happens on the streets and underground. BloomingtonStreets.com and BloomingtonUnderground.com. It also brought a timeline change to the Locust Colton CSO Elimination Project, recognizing the need for the project to be finished sooner rather than later. City Council voted to shave 3 years off the original date of completion. To help residents with cleanup after the storm, a special bulk pickup was launched, suspending bulk charges from June 28th through August 3rd. During that time, 2 million pounds or 1,020 tons of bulk waste was collected curbside. That event came with a close to $70,000 price tag. Years of planning and conversation finally came together in 2021 as Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts broke ground for the O'Neill Pool Project. And after more than 18 months of inactivity, Grosinger Motors Arena and the Bloomington Center for the Performing Arts returned to hosting live shows, including Casting Crowns and Lauren Daigle. Casting Crowns welcomed more than 1,900 concert goers, and close to 5,000 spectators took in the sights and sounds of Lauren Daigle. Combined, the shows made close to $32,000 for the city. Both shows had been postponed previously due to COVID. With COVID in mind, the arena also served as a vaccination site with more than 58,000 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine given, providing a critical resource in a time of need. After a months-long search for a new police chief, Colonel Jamal Symington was hired to lead the Bloomington Police Department. Since taking the job, Symington has adopted the 30 by 30 initiative to have a sworn staff of 30% women by 2030. And BPD's social media presence continued to grow with 40,000 followers and a reach of 3.4 million views. Fall of 2021 was a busy time as developers continued to eye Bloomington as a destination for investment. More than $100 million in new construction sprung up in 2021, including more than $20 million in new housing starts. And if the housing market was blooming, so was the business landscape as new ventures moved to town and some current organizations expanded their operations. Ferrero North America broke ground. Texas Roadhouse opened along with a new Aldi grocery store. The YMCA continued work on its new fitness facility at the OSF campus, while the Illinois Cancer Care Center expanded its building. These 5 projects alone brought more than $57 million to the Bloomington economy. Think that's a lot? Think again. City staff in 2021 issued 7,197 permits and performed more than 4,500 inspections for projects with a total construction valuation $101,445,956. And downtown exploded with 16 new businesses hanging their shingles, and the buzz of activity filled the city air with the continuation of concerts, the farmers market, First Fridays, Saturdays on the Square, and so much more. As the year came to a close, the Bloomington Public Library finished up expansion and renovation designs to meet community needs, resulting in the approval of a joint resolution between Bloomington City Council and the Library Board to take steps to issue bonds up to $17 million. A year of hard work in 2021, but none of it would have been possible without the residents of Bloomington. Those who use their voices to tell us what they need from their leaders. A community grows from the residents. We thank you, all of you, for another wonderful year and look toward new goals that we've set to achieve and new success stories that we've yet to write.
I just wanted to say, Mayor, before hand it back to you for comment from yourself and from council, just very proud to be a part of this community, work alongside the team that I have the privilege to be able to work alongside, and to echo the deputy city manager comments about the council. You know, at the end of the day, you always get the business of the city done. And I'm very proud to be a part of that and serve as your city manager. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and give council a chance to say a few words if you'd like. I know I've said enough on this particular topic. I couldn't be more excited for the work that we've done. All of us, you know, staff, council, but also with residents. And the future is looking bright, in my opinion. Okay, Councilmember Becker.
So just to add to that, I think so often we get in these discussions and it's very polarized. And the focus is on how big is the problem and who's to blame for it. And we often do forget the positives. I've spent time in many other communities, and of all of them, this is still the one that I would choose to be in. And I think as we work together, we have to step up and say, regardless of where, this is a nonpartisan council, right? We need to step up and continue to say, we're going to try and drive the success so that each year it gets better and better. There's a lot of opportunity for success in the next year. And it's only going to happen if we work together as a council, as staff, and as the citizens getting involved in the community together. Then we'll have another more successful year and we'll be able to do some of the things we want to do. But if we fight in a partisan way, you're not going to see a successful 2023, 2022, fiscal 23.
Thank you. Well said. Others? Councilmember Urban.
I'm going to actually talk. So I do want to say a few words, and hopefully this rings well with everyone. What a beautiful testimony to our 2021 year. I am sure that I will watch it several more times because I like cartoons. So I'm going to enjoy that immensely. Absolutely, 2021, there were a lot of people fighting and arguing, and we have definitely seen, I think, throughout the beginning of this year that has quieted down immensely. But there still are some fights going on in the background. There are fights going on for getting one of our public speakers' roads fixed. He's been asking for his road to be fixed for many years. That fight goes on behind the scenes, whether they realize it or not. IT department getting funded, that was a little bit of a battle behind the scenes, but we made it happen. So there's something to look forward to, getting the road fixed, maybe, not promising, just trying to help, right? IT department, couldn't make you a promise, but we got a little funding there. Public Works, getting them some more employees. I'm going to battle for them, fighting behind the scenes. West Side residents, I'm fighting behind the scenes, trying to get those things going. So don't be afraid as residents and people to speak out to us sitting up here, your council members. Let us know what you want us to be fighting for you. If we don't know what we need to do, then we can't make great videos like that at the end of year 2022. And what I'd like to see is a 15-minute video because we had to expand our success. So again, communicate, work together, and be happy. And then thank you so much to the Scott and your entire department on behalf of the people I was appointed to represent for working so hard to bring us a manageable budget that we can put forward and embrace the next 2 years in setting a higher bar for everyone in our city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well said. We could have had a 1-hour video, but I don't think anybody would have liked that on Monday night. Oh, Councilmember Bolin?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is thank you so much for the IT. 2 years of virtual. We have to
True.
we owe you a lot in order
Mhm.
for us to continue doing the meetings, get the information out to the public. So I just want to say thank you to you.
Yes, very true. That was fantastic. Just like that, I mean, when everything shut down and you guys just kind of sprung into action and made it happen. And I think that's true of many IT departments in many organizations. From what I've heard, I mean, the IT folks have worked extremely hard, longer hours than many in a lot of cases. So thank you very much for all the work you've done to get us here. And now we know we have a way of doing stuff in a hybrid way, right? But we don't want to go back to that, hopefully not. Councilmember Crumpler.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I would like to say thank you as a new council member. Coming on in May of 2021, we were sworn in. I want to thank the staff, for being so generous and helping me understand, some of the nuts and bolts, concrete particulars of how the city works. When I had questions, they were answered, and it's allowed me to be a much representative for the voters and residents of Ward 9. So I really appreciate you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, all right. Well, thank you all very much again. Catherine, thank you very much for a very nice job. Love the voice. Fantastic job. So we're gonna move on to city manager discussion.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think we have 3 slides. Indoor farmers market, that will be March 19th. And I think April begins outdoors. Is that correct? Nope. May? Okay. We'll have indoor in March. It's the 19th, and then one in April as well. Next slide. April 1st, Friday, and that is on April Fool's Day. It's no joke. It's the hunt for the golden eggs. And next slide. New employees. And the reason that we're doing this tonight is one of the other announcements that I was going to make is there is no committee of the whole meeting on the 21st. There are no agenda items, so I wanted to share that these 7 employees started with the organization. And there's one more. Make it 14 new employees, 2 slides of 7. We have actually, to one of the comments in the 21 video that Catherine provided for us, our HR department truly has handled a lot. We've done a lot of recruitments. We've done some repeat recruitments because we're up against some of the other challenges some of the challenges being up against some of the other employers in the community. But we don't stop, we don't settle, and we're willing to do that second and sometimes third recruitment to get the right employee. So want to welcome these 14 to the city of Bloomington. And already mentioned, there's no committee of the whole meeting next week. And then wanted to make the announcement that starting this Friday, March 18th, we're going to stand up the site for downtown restaurants to be able to start making application for outdoor dining for 2022. And the goal is to have those processed and have things up and running prior to Easter, which is mid-April. And we'll allow the restaurants to make the decision if they want to open up outdoors, but at least the city's done what we can and should to pave the way for an outdoor dining atmosphere a little bit earlier this year than what we did last year. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to a mayor's comment, I wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge a heartbreaking incident that occurred on last Tuesday, where a 6-year-old unfortunately lost their life as a result of domestic violence. In addition to the parents also losing their life, it's kind of a heartbreaking situation. I'd like to commend the city staff for that responded and dealt with this tragic incident, and also remind residents that we have many resources available in the community for those dealing with mental health or domestic violence, and starting with PATH, which serve as a gateway to many of the services available to those in crisis. Also wanted to briefly mention, concerns for the situation in Ukraine and the needless loss of life. I'm hopeful that common sense will prevail in that situation, and that there will be a ceasefire soon and ultimately a durable peace. I have received a few requests. As you know, the city has a sister city relationship with the city of Vladimir in Russia. And I've received a few requests to end our relationship with the city of Vladimir. But I think at this time, my thought is that it is the central government of Russia in Moscow that is at the center of the debate, and not the people of Russia themselves or the people of Vladimir. So I've heard many reports, in fact, of Russians who are in opposition of their government's actions. And in addition, I think economic sanctions are what's most likely to have an impact on the Russian government. So at this time, I'm not inclined personally to take action with regard to our sister city relationship with Vladimir, but I'm certainly open to feedback. Other thing I wanted to mention last week was the One Voice trip, where members of the community come together with a unified voice to speak to folks in DC about various projects that are important to the community. We attended, Councilmember Matthey and myself attended several of the meetings virtually. So it was my first time actually doing it, believe it or not. And virtually also the first time. So it was definitely interesting, great projects for Binward, but also the airport has another project for cold storage. And so I'm definitely looking forward to doing that in person next time, because from what I've been told, a lot of the networking happens, outside of those meetings. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we also last week, which was a busy week, we had a meeting with a group, DCI, Development Counselors Incorporated, something like that. and the DCI in short, to kick off their community branding efforts with the community. And that was also a very good opportunity for many of us to speak to them about what we feel like our community is and where we would like it to go. So it was also aspirational. So they're going to try to capture that for all of us. That would allow us to really be able to project to folks outside of the community, businesses, future residents, and be able to attract them to the community. So they were here for about 72 hours for meetings with a number of different groups, but they will also reach out to various individuals in the community to try to gather more information about that. So don't be surprised if you get tapped on the shoulder to fill out a survey. And if you do, please fill out that survey. Thank you very much. That's all I had. Now we'll turn it over to council members if you have any comments. Okay. Councilmember Craybill?
Oh, first, okay,
Yes, go
thank you.
ahead.
Yeah, just with Tim's mention of the outdoor dining and permits, just to keep in mind, I believe the ordinance that allows that requires the outdoor dining to be ADA compliant. And you know, I think kind of, you know, it has meaning only if we, you know, enforce that and make sure that whatever they put up is ADA compliant. And if we have any knowledge from what happened last year, if there were any that were not compliant, that we, you know, work especially with those, you know, entities that are applying. So that's all I'll say on that.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Ward?
Thank you. Thank you. For those who are still skeptical of the need for a special commission dedicated to finding a solution to the issue of gun violence in Bloomington, I too draw your attention to last week's news, which brings this year's number of shooting deaths in our community to 5, including the 6-year-old child that the mayor mentioned. As if that were not enough, Friday morning brought yet another shooting. We are not quite halfway through the month of March. For those who need more data to be supportive of the city establishing a special commission, please note that the number of additional weapons violations on the city's crime data map since I first proposed the idea of a special commission back in July runs to 3 full pages. That's additionally since July. For those who see this as limited to gang activity or any other single cause, note that last week's 3 gun violence deaths were linked to domestic violence. Also note that suicides are not listed on the crime map. For those who would simply fold this issue into the work of an existing department or board or water it down by the creation of a generic anti-crime effort, please note that what we are doing already clearly isn't working. For those who continue to worry that confronting this issue clearly and directly is a turnoff to outside investors in our community, I wonder what those prospective new neighbors have been thinking as they heard last week's news. We are better than this. We just heard what amazing work our community can accomplish when we dedicate our creativity and our energy to it. Our residents are literally dying for us to put our creativity and energy into getting to work on this issue. Let's do it.
Thank you. Councilmember Emig.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Ward, for your comments. I just want to point out that there's so much strength and diversity, and sometimes I think we do our best work when we disagree initially, as long as we can creatively use that energy to come up with something better, and the work is never, ever done. I also want to support the mayor and his comments about not severing ties with our sister city in Vladimir. That very relationship was forged in large part because of the Cold War, and that's how we are able to have any hope of lasting peace in the long run. So I support that and appreciate your comments. And finally, I just want to take a moment to recognize that we lost a champion in our community. Servant leader Willie Brown passed away recently, as most of you know. He was an incredible individual who made a huge difference in this community. So I just wanted to acknowledge his passing and say thank you, Willie.
Thank you, Councilmember Emig. Councilmember Bolin?
Yeah, I am also saddened about violence in general, especially like you mentioned over in Eastern Europe. And we do have violence here, but I would like to bring to the attention of the council that there are boards that have highly trained professionals that are in existence. One is the Law and Justice Coordinating Council, which have several initiatives out to work with at-risk individuals to prevent them from getting into the criminal justice system and also to serve them once they are released. I currently serve on the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council. They also are staffed with highly trained professionals that are working with or have initiatives that address cases of mental illness. Now, me for one, there has to be something wrong with someone that will point a gun at another human and pull the trigger. So there are groups that are working on it. The community needs to be made aware that they exist. The community needs to be made aware of what the programs are. And I support Molly's thought of working on this, but I think taking advantage of some of the information that is out there would be of value. I do know that the Stevenson Center has done research regarding gun violence, accessing that information, or putting graduate students to work under the leadership of Dr. Beck would be of great value. That's all I have to say about this.
Thank you. Councilmember Becker?
Just to add to that, Donna, I personally believe, and I've read much over the years on, one of the places where we can be preemptive in preventing violence, and that is supportive families and supportive, fathers in the home, and just making sure that there's a lot of effort given to really strengthen the family structure across the board. And there are many organizations in town. I'm just going to highlight one that hopefully maybe down the road we can get some more information presented to us. But Children's Home and Aid does a ton to work with families. For the last couple of years, I've been involved with their Fatherhood Coalition and trying to bring dads from all around the community together to try and allow the dads to support each other. And it's an amazing group in that in the time that I was there was no delineation across race, age, married, single, anything. It was just dads getting together to try and support each other to be better fathers and to provide a better atmosphere for our children so that they didn't get into those kind of situations. So again, as Donna said, there's a lot of things going on. And I think sometimes when we focus rightfully on the problem, as Molly says, we need to realize that there's a lot of solution happening right now, and there's a lot of efforts, but these things take time and efforts from us as a council, from staff, but also from all of the citizens in the community. You need to get involved with these organizations and help support these organizations too. We can't stop things. The citizens getting involved and working with these organizations and working with the police and working with the Law and Justice Commission, as Donna said, us all getting together is how the problem's going to get solved. So I do believe there's a ton more going on that people often forget because we get focused on just the hurt that we all see when we see the problem manifest itself like it did last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other comments, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh. Okay, is there a second? Second by Councilmember Becker. We're gonna stay here all night. I got all night. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.